Hello? Tiger. Where is he?
He? Who?
He ruined my name, yeah.
Did he? Bad. But what name?
The blessed dead body name my godmother dumped on me. All my life I've had to live it down.
I'm waiting, sir.
For what?
For your blessed dead body name.
Oh, sorry.
Lazarus.
Lazzarini Rittivole. Can you beat that?
Sounds great. So you've done it.
What?
Stepped out of the grave, sir.
Couldn't rest in peace, yeah. He called me a miscreant. Might as well have called me malcriado or a bad egg. Me, Lazzarini Rittivole.
Ah, I get it. You're the miscreant from Victor's book.
Hello. So you know that character?
Yes. And I know the author even better.
Really? Where's the blighter?
Far away in America.
Never too far. I'll catch up with him, just you wait. And the woman whose name means lioness.
Yes. Leah Rangel-Ribeiro.
The smiling lioness. She went and married Victor. He called me a miscreant. Me, the brightest, most creative soul in blasted Tivole.
You a mischief maker? Nah.
Just a few pranks, yeah. A dash of spice in the boring curry.
That's Victor's little joke, you know. The miscreant is what I'd call a super catalyst.
Cat or what? Stole a bull and I cycled off with a squealing pig. Now a cat or what?
Catalyst. In your colorful presence, the village of Tivole showed its truest colors. See, Victor loves his literary tricks. He is a writer, sir, by definition. I can tell you about Victor Rangel-Ribeiro.
Okay, unload. I'll suffer it with courage. Then it's my turn. I'll tell you about the lioness. Fair exchange go by?
Victor Rangel-Ribeiro
was born in Goa, India on the 3rd of October 1925.
In my early 20s, I happened to be in the office of the famous movie director Ismail Merchant. And on Merchant's shelf was this book called Tivole. And Merchant told me, you know, there's this very interesting book and it's been given to me. I guess Victor gave it to him. And you should get a copy of it. So I went and I got a copy of it and I was absolutely delighted.
When we talk of Victor, everyone thinks of Tivole.
Yes. And of course, the strange thing is that now when I came back to Goa, I was on the plateau, the Purvanian plateau. And if I went looking for Tivole, I would not find it. I would get lost. Because the little village that I grew up in and that I describe in the book has turned into a town.
Talking about Tivole, it was published in 98, as you
98,
reminded me,
yeah.
Which was quite a late start, but I think the hopeful message is that it's never too late to start. Because
No,
when you started it, when you published it, you were how old?
78 years old, something
Wow.
like that, 73 years old.
I think we need to underline that you had many different careers. You were first a journalist, then
Yes.
you worked in advertising, and
Right.
then you went to New York. You rose in a very hard way to become the music critic of the New York Times.
Right.
And then you started your own music shop in
I took over a music shop.
Loving Aisha would be your collection of short stories.
Yes.
A bit about it.
The titled story, Loving Aisha, is like a novella. It's quite long. And it is actually part memoir. And I fell in love, as young people do. Took me almost a week to write it, and I was crying
I see.
all the time. But the moment I wrote it, that ended.
And in 1996, I was helping Francis Newton Souza, who had become a friend of mine. I was helping him clean out his apartment. And while doing that, he had one of his phones, where he had the oldest possible instrument you could have. And it was kind of broken. And by then you had new kinds of things coming in, like caller ID, right, and stuff like that. So I bought him a new phone and installed it. And I asked him, who are the people you'd like to speak to that you haven't spoken to for a while? And he gave me 2 or 3 names. One of them was Victor Rangel-Ribeiro. So the first time I ever spoke to Victor Rangel-Ribeiro was over the phone from Francis Newton Souza's house.
I was part of the workshop at Fundação Orient, and that one workshop which you had with Margaret Mascarenhas and a few others probably triggered off the full Goa Writers Group, you know, in that sense, which brought about many good things. And one of the products of the Goa Writers Group was this book, Inside Out.
Yes, Inside Out.
Well, well, you've met the man. Big guy, huh? Makes things worse for me. Big guy makes Lazarus the bad guy.
Everyone gulps the fake news. May they choke on it.
Lazarine, I'm Aisha. Stop griping. Now tell me about Leah. How do you know her?
My neighbor's auntie's cousin was married to her cousin's uncle's neighbor in Bombay. I can tell you all you need to know about her. But why do you want to know? You jealous or what, Aisha?
Yes, a little, yes.
They say she smelt of India in her glorious silk sari.
She was a charming lady, friendly, with a warm smile. Always dressed in Indian outfits, a salwar kameez or a sari.
I remember her as a very graceful, lovely lady. She was just so welcoming. And you know what she wondered? She said, I saw girls riding on bikes with their flowing dupattas, and she liked that dupattas behind the girls riding bike.
I think one of the reasons why they decided to settle in New York when they migrated to USA was because Leah wanted to go to the Juilliard School. She got admission there, she started her classes, but then she had a problem, the visa problem. She was told that if she wanted to continue in the United States, she had to take up a job. And the job that was available to her, she was a graduate from St. Xavier's College, Mumbai, was a teaching job in a Catholic school. She took up this job, but she had to give up the Juilliard School because the place where she was teaching, the place where they were living, and the Juilliard School was far from each other.
As a musician, my mom was incredible. Her technique, her musicianship, her ability to make things sing were amazing. I, like many children, wanted to spend my time doing the things that my mom did. So I guess in some ways it made sense that since my mom spent so much time at the keyboard when I was very small, I would try to imitate her. And my parents say that I first approached the piano when I was 3, and that was the beginning of my studying music. I have a different way of looking at things. I think my musical training started in utero. You know, they say that playing classical music, Mozart in particular, is great for babies before they're born. So only imagine what I got to listen to.
Carmelina, I had written in Konkani and Devanagari script. I never expected anyone to read them, particularly one who has been living in the States. But to my surprise, Victor made it a point to brush up his Konkani. Probably he was quite, fluent in Konkani earlier. So he brushed up his language, and above that, he made it a point to revive his knowledge of Devanagari, which he had studied in his college days while learning Hindi.
He's 93 now, I think, and he still does so many things, you know. I mean, he's always on the go, always trying to do stuff. And the other thing about him is his irrepressible sense of humor. It's really something else. Every conversation with him is full of laughs, and that is something I also enjoy very much. I'm part of the quiz club here, the Sunday evening quiz club. So we have regular competitions of different kinds, and one of the competitions we were running over the course of the year was an equivalent of the BBC Mastermind. It was called Sexy Mastermind. Sunday Evening Quiz Club, SEQC is pronounced sexy. So it's called a Sexy Mastermind. And by coincidence, Victor and I ended up in the same team. We had a great time. I mean, he was so much fun. And, you know, I mean, a lot of the quiz club regular members were there. And after the qualification round, 8 people were chosen, the top 8. And to imagine that Victor was among those guys, you know, that's quite something.
Whenever he's talking to you, he always has some store of past history, word origins, Goan history, world history, European history, Portuguese food, music. He has such an enormous store of knowledge. Every time I'm amazed at what he can just dig up from the depths of his memory. He remembers everything. Recently he was sick, he's in hospital. We went to see him. Even there, he is at his witty best. He's lying on that hospital bed. He can't move around. He's half, I think, under anesthesia or something. He's still joking. He's still talking about history.
There's so much laughter happening in that room. We actually had people coming and sort of looking into the room saying, I mean, I guess they're wondering in a hospital, what's going on? Like, why?
One nurse did come in and like, what happening? Then we said, shh, shh, shh.
When I was with the National Standard, I was also their music critic. And the reason I became their music critic was because I walked up to my editor, who was an Englishman, and I said to him, the Times of India has a music critic, and they have a lot of readers that we don't have. Why don't we have a music critic? And he said, do you know someone who will do that? I said, you're looking at him. So I became a music critic. Of course, I had studied music, I had a large collection of scores and recordings, and I kept going to concerts. At one concert, Milli Mehta, the very famous violinist, Zubin Mehta's father, was the soloist, and there were other people there. And Shanti Selden was the pianist. But I noticed somebody else. There was a young woman who was not playing anything, but she was turning the pages. But her concentration on the music was so intense. And she was also so beautiful that I fell in love with her. For weeks and months after that, I asked people, who was that young woman? But apparently I was describing somebody who resembled an angel, so they didn't recognize who I meant. Then a musician that I knew by sight, and I knew he was very prominent there, came to my office and said, my son has performed in Paris. Will you write him up? I did. He performed in Lisbon, in London. I wrote him up. And then he said, won't you have dinner with us? So I agreed. And when I knocked on the door, the person who opened it was the person who had been turning pages. So I was very, very happy. Eventually, we got married. It took four years of chasing her all over Bombay. And she gave me a bus, on the back of a bus ticket, she wrote, I will never, never marry you. And I proved her wrong.
I have been really blessed to know Victor and Leah. I think they are my friends for last more than 20 years. I have enjoyed a lot of their humor. Their lives have been a great inspiration, both of them. And I have not met many couples who are so much loving. I mean, they were really in love, because Victor, even at a much older age, would tell me that let's do a secret portrait of Leah. He got it done from my sister. So these are the kind of relationships which are really inspiring. I have been lucky that I have illustrated, I have done a cover for 2 of his books.
A man of many hats, Victor Rangel-Ribeiro. Endless zest, even when I knew him.
Conducted orchestras like tum-ti-tum-tum-tum. Never tires or what?
He and his wife donated a lot of books for the Kala Academy. Books, huge amount of books, like 13 to 15 boxes which he donated. Another thing I know about Victor is he's as a conductor.
So many feathers in his cap.
And for driving safely, whatever you drive,
Making notes?
down the cost of insurance. Call 1-800-Allstate or a local agent.
About groaning boards?
No, it's about the novel
Oh,
that I have with the paper with me.
I'm telling you, a book is better. A notebook where all the papers are stay in one place.
His editorial skills are fantastic. He's really an excellent editor.
He was the first time who brought to my notice. He said, this is precisely because you are the writer within you and the copy editor that you have within you, they both work simultaneously. That is the reason why you don't have to rewrite. So for me, this is something, new and some discovery.
Peacock like, he flew away. He knew I was out to get him. Even in college, the teachers would point at me and die laughing. So I set out for Icona. I pinched the Padigad cycle at midnight and rode off to put him in the dock. But he'd flown the coop, gone to America, where he spread his wings, far and wide, a winner. Itu bosre mara pilan kara, pilan sodun mur udun gelo. Brrr.
Hey, he left, but he never stopped loving his Goa, his India.
The billy goat gave the sign and the mother pinched the little one. And the billy goat said, Burgi hida krotta. Why are the children crying? And she answered, Magache maskan sotta. They want to eat the flesh of a tiger.
Leah came from a family of musicians. Her father, Sebastian Vaz, was a famous violinist, and so also her brother. And then she married in a family that had many musicians. Her husband, the novelist and the writer, Victor, was a pianist. His sisters and brother and the father, each one of them played different instruments, and they also sang.
And when we arrived, she was admitted to Juilliard. One of the things that we did to use our spare time, although we already had a baby daughter, we decided to start a music program at the Catholic Youth Organization in a very poor section of New York City, the Lower East Side, which was largely Hispanic. So I went to the Catholic Youth Organization, talked to them, they agreed. We started a music school. At first it was free. We announced that it was free. And at the end of 2 weeks, we had 8 students. So we discussed this between ourselves, and we said, all right, we'll charge them $1 a week. Within a month, we had 100 students. They didn't appreciate something that was free, but so long as they had to pay for it, they were willing to do it. And Leah began teaching piano there. Then she joined the United Nations School. And that was fantastic. Now she came in touch with students from all over the world. And within 3 years, I think, we suddenly get a phone call. And I take the call, and it's Desmond Cole, who was the director of the United Nations School. And he says, I want to offer your wife the principalship. This was during the summer session, summer vacation. He came to the house and he talked to her, and she resisted it. She didn't want to become the principal. We got into a car and I drove to Teachers College in New York City,
And she picked up the books on administration that she might need. She went home, she studied them. And 2 days later, when Cole called again, she agreed to become the principal. Now we come to the first day in school. At the end of the day, I said to her, "How did it go?" She said, "Not well." When I walked, I must explain here, she was a fairly recent addition to the school, right? 3 years or 4 years of experience. There were teachers in the school who had been there for 10 and 15 years. And here's this person from a foreign country wearing a sari come to be our boss. She said, when I walk down the school, they hear my bangles, or they hear my sari, and they close the doors of their classroom. This was supposed to be a school where the doors were kept open. So I said, all right, let's take them at their game. First of all, read up as much as you can about the backgrounds of each teacher. Then you go as noisily as you can, and when you approach the door, knock on the door. When the teacher opens the door, smile, greet them, and ask for permission to come in, which they can't refuse. And then talk to the children about the teacher. After that, talk to the children about what it is to be in the school and how you are happy to see them there and that you will be in close touch all the time. She developed a relationship with the children, the teachers, and the parents.
Actually, my brother and I spent a lot of time being pretty jealous about those other kids because it felt like Mom was always working. She'd work when Dad was driving her to work in the morning, and then after work, coming home in the car, she'd also be working, and after dinner, she'd be working in her office, and on weekends also. So we felt sort of like they were more her children than we were in some ways. Not that it was the truth, but that's how we perceived it as kids.
And as the result of her efforts, when it came time for her to retire, after 31 years teaching there was a revolution. The children cried, the parents cried, and they signed a huge petition that the teachers also signed, asking her to stay on. So she stayed on for another year, and when she did retire, the Secretary General of the United Nations stopped by to wish her well. There was a huge party. The cafeteria was crowded to capacity.
I heard that she taught students from many countries all around the world, and she used to confess to a little Indian boy every time she came back from her holidays. I love it. You smell of India.
I smell of India, don't I, Gobai? Had she been my teacher, would I have become a miscreant? No.
Yes, maybe. Hey, listen, Aisha, right?
How do you know about Victor's hats and feathers and all? Your auntie's neighbor's cousin was married to his uncle's mother's friend, right?
Wrong. He wrote a whole long story about me. Loving Aisha. Victor believes that learning something new every day keeps the mind sharp.
Like mine.
When I joined Goa Writers in the month of December, I was pretty new to this entire setup. Victor's age, I saw 94. I said, this must be a mistake. I went and I checked again. I said, couldn't be, no? Then I checked the birth date. I said, oh, okay, it says 1925. The amazing thing was that they were very approachable. And not just approachable, when they spoke about your work, there was a kind of, oneness.
I first met Victor and his lovely wife Leah in mid-2008 at a Goan convention held in Mississauga. I attended Victor's sessions for the first 2 days. I was very impressed with the gentle but focused way he conveyed the basics of developing a story. Finally, I broke down and sheepishly admitted that I too had launched myself on a writing career in 2006 after retirement at the age of 67. But I gave up after a year or so. I wished to write my life, which looking back in time, appeared almost fictional in a changing world. Victor was surprised that I had given up so easily. He asked me to send him a draft chapter or two, and he would advise me if there was a glimmer of hope or undiscovered talent worth nurturing. He agreed to mentor me for the first year.
Victor has never failed to comment and critique anything that I have written and submitted on the group. Be it short stories, be it an essay, be it a poem. Victor would be instantly saying, "Jose, this is a good poem." And I was really humbled by that, that such a senior writer should think that my writing is good enough. And that was one of the reasons I think that kept me going, and I kept writing.
Another way in which the Goa Writers Group is really representative of Goa is that it's multilingual, and I think this is one of the things that is so important about Indian writing today, that every Indian writer to some degree is coping with multiple languages. And in the Goa Writers Group, it's wonderful the way that we have, say, Damodar Bhai here bringing in a Konkani perspective, Jose Lorenz, who's something of a scholar on Konkani writing. He's continuously kept us informed about Konkani writing. This is really a wonderful gift, and we have to remember, really, with gratitude, Victor Rangel-Ribeiro, who founded this group and who's become a friend of mine.
Now I wondered, I've written something, what do I do? So I put it on the group. There were a lot of good comments. But Victor wrote to me separately. He said, "This poem is inspired. You need to develop it."
15 months later, I had written 800 pages without any signal to stop. I was getting desperate. My wife and I visited him in New Jersey. Leah was quite ill at the time. Eventually, we talked about the manuscript. He smiled coyly, and without the slightest signs of remorse, he said, "Good. Now try and condense it down to 200 pages, because no publisher is going to publish a book of 800 pages. I gave up writing promptly. But by now, I had tasted the joy of writing.
I managed to get some friends to organize my ticket to New York and back. But then I wanted to go to I didn't know how to go to the convention. And I knew that Victor and Leah were also resource persons. Besides me having my exhibition there, they were resource persons. So I went one day to their house and asked them whether I could travel with them from New Jersey to Toronto. So they came there, and I told Victor and Leah, the inauguration will be a little bit out of the box. I said, I'm covering my artwork with a art paper, and you'll have to lift it up. So when we came to the entrance of the gallery, so both of them lifted the art paper, and they saw themselves, and that is how you see them laughing, because I had never seen them laughing so much. They were just rollicking with laughter,
because there was Leah playing the piano and Victor was conducting her.
What I admired most was his childlike quality.
People always ask each other when you meet a friend, they will say, when did you retire? And if you're in business or if you're in an office of some sort, you will retire at 50, 55, 60, 65, 70. But a writer can never retire because it's a disease, it's an illness. And not even Dr. Gomez here can cure it. He himself is writing books now. How old are you, Tony?
I don't like to disclose my age.
Okay.
In America, they were immigrants. Don't forget. Not a picnic for Indians.
Yeah. Pedro the pharmacist told me they were global citizens. What's that?
Well, one foot here, one foot there. Free, but not always secure.
Playing musical chairs like.
So you were among the first to migrate to New York in the 50s, among one of the very early few.
My sister, Leah, went there in 1942.
Wow.
And she went to Harvard, which admitted very few women at the time, and she broke a 20-year record.
You call me Victor, but I am used to listen to the people in the busy streets of New York calling me, hey, you.
Even while searching for a house in 1962, he and his family faced blatant discrimination. Their next door neighbor, he recalls, once threw a dead cat over the fence.
Well, from there, I began working with drug addicts, no, juvenile delinquents. And their reaction to me was, when I first walked in, they said to me, you come from India, you can't teach us anything. And I said, look, what makes you think I've come here to teach you? I'll be learning by your side. I felt a great empathy for those young people there. I was the master teacher come to force learning down their throats. No, I didn't want this to be a joint enterprise. Now the third thing was when I began teaching drug addicts. These were all adults. As soon as I entered the room, one man from the back shouted, Victor, you're brain damaged. And I shouted back, what took you so long to find out?
The lioness shines bright in her smile, her school, and her sari.
One of the students in her school was a young woman called Sarah Kay. So she was in a sense representative of the student body. She became very attached to Leah. And I think we have a photograph of her somewhere, of her showing Leah something that she had made herself. Years later, Sarah Kay, now grown up, remembered Leah walking down the corridor, remembered hearing the rustle of the silk sari, the clink of the bangles, and wrote a poem about her.
I was visiting a school in northern India when I heard it for the first time in ages. It was barely audible over the shouting of children, the squeals and laughter bubbling up from the schoolyard through the classroom window, but it was there. The swish of silk saris and the jingle jangle of bangles on thin wrists like wind chimes. This is what learning sounds like. I remember when I was 5 years old, The principal of our junior school was Mrs. Ribeiro. She was an Indian woman the size of a nightlight, and she glided like a sailboat through the hallways of our school. Once, when I got close enough to grab a fistful of her draping silk sari, I lifted it to try and see if she had any feet at all. I thought she floated. We begged to be sent to her office, the hanging plants like a jungle above our heads, her quiet laughter. Adults needed an appointment, but we did not. And even when she was in a grown-up meeting, all it took was a gentle knock on the door, a peek around the corner, and she was off, calling, "Sorry, dear, we'll have to reschedule. I have to meet with someone else about a very important matter. It's about a gold star. It's about a new diorama. It's about a finished reading book, one level higher than last time." She knew every student by name, visited every classroom, spoke to us like we were scholars, artists, scientists, athletes, musicians, and we were. My world was the size of a crayon box, and it took every color to draw her. Once, on a New York City sidewalk, a group of women in brightly colored saris walked by, and someone shouted, "Look, Ma, look at all those principals." My world was the size of a classroom. It was as tall as I could stretch my fingers, calling, "Please, pick me to be the one to read to Mrs. Ribeiro. Pick me to be the one to show her what I know." She made us wonder. She made us question. She made us proud of what we had learned. She taught us to share. She taught us to listen to each other when someone else is speaking, and then she let us go. We were dandelion seeds released to the wind. She asked for no return.
And it has spread because people watch that YouTube video and they comment on that type of education. A remarkable woman. She never lost her love for music, but her dream went in a slightly different way, and she excelled at that just as well. We should all be able to touch so many lives so beautifully.
So many years have gone by. And if I had been to their home after all these years, what would I have found? Music, for sure.
Listen to the Rhapsody. You can still hear the echoes of old Jewish songs.
And love. Listen, I look at my own family and have no regrets. I too have been rewarded, and I don't have to tell him so. He is acutely aware of our happiness. And yes, you would have found love.
Yes, I'm so very glad.
Hi, brother. Look at this.
Hi, Dana! Hi! Can you take these bags out of the window? Hi, Dana. Hi. Pamela. Oh!
What immediately struck me at every one of those meetings, encounters, was the love they had for each other. This was a couple that was intensely in love.
Hey Lazarine, if you could give them a medal, what would it be for?
Medal? Me? You're crazy. I'd have to grab the gold medal Brahman and Shankwalkar one for goalkeeping.
My medal would be for their ability to mentor so many people. Victor and Leah have encouraged people to grow as writers, musicians, as good people.
Moving into college, the principal there was Father Coyne, who was very dignified, but cared about all of us. And he spent time mentoring some of us. I was one of the fortunate ones, and he told me that there are 3 questions that I should ask myself every night before I go to sleep. The first question, how have I touched the life of someone I know in a positive way? That's easy, right? The second one was rather more difficult. How have I today touched the life of someone I don't know? That should take some trying. And the third one was, what have I done today to improve the talents with which God has bestowed on me? If you think of the importance of that question, if every night before going to sleep, which is, he recommended, if you can't answer positively, don't go to sleep until you can fix it. If you work on improving yourself every night before you go to sleep, for 5 years, 10 years, you have given yourself a university education. And yet so few people do bother to do that.
If I can release some insider information, I think he's working on 3 books currently at this point of time, including a biography of Francis Newton Souza, H. Souza.
It is with great pride that we launch a publication and project that has been dear to my heart. Souza, the artist, his loves and his times. A biography written by eminent author and my very good friend, Victor. This book honors and celebrates the genius of Francis Newton Souza. My relationship with Souza has been quite unique, not just because of his Goan origin, but because he was born in Saligaon, the birth village of my ancestors. Souza's work has always fascinated me, right from the late 70s when I first began learning about Indian art and artists. I'm very excited to have 3 very dear friends with me today. Victor, who has tirelessly and enthusiastically worked on this book for the last 8 years. Victor, your dedication and attention to detail has been phenomenal. Connor of Grosvenor Gallery, a very dear friend and a friend of Suna Prant. In fact, he gave a wonderful lecture last month. And last but not the least, Mr. Lakshman Pai. Thank you very much for being with us today as one of Souza's contemporaries. It is a great honor and it's very special to have you with us.
I think that what makes this book particularly relevant and particularly interesting is the fact that it's written by Victor. And I was just looking today just to see the parallels, and the clear parallel to me, and which I really want to ask Victor about to get the ball starting, is, and this is what makes this book very unique, would be his insight, because Victor, above all, is a contemporary of Souza. So his account will be unique from this point of view, because he will have the first-hand, the primary information on Souza. So Victor, I see that you were born in 1925. Souza was born in 1924.
Yes.
So you're both pretty much the same age. So I want to ask you first 2 questions, and you can answer them in your own time. But first, I want to ask that, how did you first hear or come to hear of Souza? And then second, how did you then finally meet, and what was your relationship? And then I'll ask another question after that.
The strange thing is that we spent our childhood 2 or 3 years in Saligaon, in houses that were almost back to front, but we never met there. We spent some years in Bombay, we never met there. We met in New York in 1967 because I had settled there, and Souza and Barbara Zinkand fled London in order to escape the lawsuits and things that were there. A cousin of ours, Luis Miranda, got to know Sousa first, and he insisted that my wife and I, should drive with him to meet Sousa. Later, the significance of this is that later, Luis Miranda became a patron of Sousa, a better patron than perhaps Kovner and the man from Detroit. It's a move we didn't want at first to make the drive, but I'm so glad that we did, because we met an extraordinary couple, both Sousa and his young bride, Barbara Zinkant.
He showed us that, remember we went to his house last time, he showed us the, was it a proof or something of the new book?
Copy. Yeah,
he was so excited.
Yeah, he was very excited.
Yeah, to have published so much.
Yeah.
And then even then, to be excited about this latest thing.
Yeah.
It's just so childlike and so lovely.
I said, sir, but still, how am I going to be a writer? And he looked at me, and he didn't know maybe probably how to react. He looked at me, I didn't know whether the expression was whether he was angry or what. He pointed a finger at me and he said, go home today and start writing, he said.
I learnt a lot from Victor. And what's more, I had barred my soul into telling my story. I would write a Matata trilogy instead. Thank you, Victor Rangel-Ribeiro. You are the best friend and a gift any budding writer could have.
I'm so happy for that today because I've continued writing ever since. 9 books and plus I think more than 100 articles and about 100 short stories and the works. I'm thankful to Victor Rangel-Ribeiro for that.
When I pinch that medal, I'll wear it myself. You know what I've realized? Miscreant or not, I'm pretty famous. Crazy, na? Thanks. You've got a medal for them or what, Aisha?
Not exactly. But I dabble in paints, you see. So I've made Victor and Leah
a crazy token of love and thanks. Viva re viva, viva, viva.
It has been a great pleasure to associate with Victor and to embrace his wisdom in my own writing, as well as our joint association with the Two Bridges Writing Workshop that Victor introduced me to. I shall end with a poem I wrote and dedicated to Leah and Victor, which appears in my poetry collection, Mirrored Reflections. The poem is titled The Hour. Gliding hand in hand to bed, night was a dark flower, a trail of roses, sunflowers, the autumn breath of their lives together, the final hour. Thank you.
I'm glad you're here. Send the children the next paragraph. Also, Now, I sent a message to some of my friends, my writer friends. I said, I'm conducting this concert. I would like you to come. Bring your family and friends. But if you don't think that spending a whole evening listening to classical music is a good idea, send your enemies.